Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Barry Erickson, and I'm Community Engagement Coordinator at Wheaton Public Library. Throughout the year, we partner with the DuPage Art League to bring you these art demonstrations. Founded 63 years ago, the DuPage Art League is committed to the arts and bringing enriching programming to art lovers throughout our community. Located on Front Street in downtown Wheaton, the DuPage Art League is both a school and gallery. They are dedicated to promoting and encouraging the visual arts through classes, workshops, gallery exhibits, and free public arts programs. Their classes and workshops cover a wide range of mediums and are designed for all ages. The beautiful storefront gallery and gift shop is open to the public. We are grateful to the DuPage Art League for arranging tonight's demonstration. Benjamin L Calvert Iii is a third-generation wood block relief printmaker. He was first introduced to this medium by his grandmother while attending Knox College. He has had the opportunity to share his art through monthly art exhibits at the DuPage Art League and solo shows, including a 7-month exhibit at the Harold Washington Library Center in Chicago in 2019, and an ongoing virtual exhibit with the Wheaton Public Library. He will have a solo show at Lewis University's Brent and Jean Wadsworth Family Gallery in the spring of 2022. You may also have seen his art at regional art fairs such as the Riverwalk Fine Art Fair in Naperville, the Glen Ellen Festival of the Arts, and the Geneva Arts Fair. He teaches relief printmaking at the DuPage Art League, the Elmhurst Art Museum, and the Martin Arboretum. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Ben. We're anxious to see your demonstration.
I'd like to thank the Wheaton Public Library as well as the DuPage Art League for hosting me tonight. And I'd like to welcome all the participants and hope that you enjoy my presentation. And again, I'd like to iterate that if you have any questions, I do enjoy answering them. I'll be as helpful as I can. You can ask them during the presentation. If there's a question about something that I'm doing at the time, sometimes it's easier for me to explain at that moment. I want to also share with you a little bit of my history. I am a third-generation printmaker, and I brought with one of my grandmother's prints here. So proud of my grandmother. She went back to college in her 60s and graduated a couple years before I did. And so when I had the opportunity to take an independent study at Knox College, she was very instrumental in helping me with my woodblock printmaking. So this is one of her prints. And then Barry, if we can go to the PowerPoint, there's some pen and inks of my father's. Growing up, encouraged to participate with art, and having his artwork on the walls sort of embedded these images. And so Barry, if you go to the next one, there's another animal. And then so that was an inspiration for some of my print works that we'll see in a bit. And then there's our family cat when I was growing up. So things that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis are a lot of the inspiration for my prints. And if you go to the next slide, there's the title of that is My Cat, and that is the print of Alexander, our family cat. So you'll see in my work, it's a recurring experience that presents itself, and then I finally have seen it so many times that I need to create a print from it. So we'll go from there. So Barry, if you want to come back here. So this is my first Zoom presentation, and we'll see how this goes. And I'm imagining seeing all your smiling faces and inquisitiveness out in the audience. On occasion, I will have a participant who likes to draw. I'll ask that for them to give me an image while I'm doing my introduction. For tonight, I asked our helpful person, Ellen here. She's also a teacher here at the DuPage Art League. She provided me with a drawing of a ginkgo leaf. So this is what I'm going to be printing tonight, making a carving and then printing it, and we'll see where it goes. As an aside, and then with artwork and your experiences, there's always this like 6 degrees of separation. One of my grandmother's favorite prints was doing ginkgo, and she did etchings of it and sold it at the ginkgo shop at the Morton Arboretum. So this is going to be fun to show you how to print. So since we are, I'm going to do a 2-color print with a green background and then a yellow foreground for the leaves. So the first thing we're going to do is take our paper here. This is a registration board, and we have holes in the side here, and that allows us to register our block and the paper to the block. So if we just line that up.
Could we get a close look at the drawing maybe before we get started?
Sure, yes. So
Give the camera a chance to really focus in on that. If one of you can make noise, we can make sure that it switches to that.
I'll keep talking then. Once I get started talking in this, it'll be hard to stop me. And and we will be printing with water-based inks tonight. If we were printing with oil-based, we'd have the Zoom meeting ongoing for about maybe 2 or 3 weeks while the ink was drying. So it's just a one-night presentation. So come back here, line this back up. One of the things I like in my classes is for people to bring their own image with, and their final print will be more meaningful to them because it's something that they have created initially, and while they're working, they're seeing what they imagine the print to be. So seeing this, I'm reflecting on visits to the Morton Arboretum with my grandmother and just enjoying it. So now this is carbon paper, but you can also take a pencil and rub the back of your drawing so that the carbon from the pencil transfers the image. But we're going to just use carbon paper. And I'm just going to quickly put in some lines.
Ben, if we can ask, what type of wood are you using and where do you get your wood blocks?
Yeah. So these blocks here are poplar plank, and you can buy that at All Lumber in Lombard. It's on Roosevelt. They sell a plank which is quite lengthy. So if you have a saw handy, you can carve it down to the size, a working size. In my classes, we use basswood, which is a softer wood. And the new students get experience carving that way. And Ellen is probably having a heart attack as I'm just speedily putting these lines on. These are just guides anyhow. Once I take the knife to the wood, I will get more details. And I will reference her lovely drawing, which I'm massacring. So the other type of wood that I use is plywood. And this is a little sample block. If you do go with plywood, it's very nice because it is constructed mostly of pine, so which is another softwood. It's easy to carve, but you will want to pay attention to the thickness of the veneer. So this is about 3/16 of an inch maybe, and that's a nice thickness. If you go with a plywood that has an oak veneer or any of the fancy hardwood veneers, you want to stay away from those because the veneer is so thin that the next layer down is glue, and then the next layer of wood is cross pattern. The grain is crosswise, and that's what makes the plywood very thick or strong for their thickness. Is they layer the grains crisscross, and that becomes very difficult to carve through because when you're carving with the grain, it's easy to carve. When you're carving across the grain, it's a little more difficult, and you get some tear out, so your lines are not as clean. And when there's not a lot of wood to carve one direction and it's going the other way, there's a lot of tear out. So just be careful about the thickness of your veneer if you use plywood. The nice thing is plywood is very flat. And when you're printmaking, the flatness of the board is important. If you have a cup where it bows in like this, then the bottom of that cup isn't going to get the same amount of pressure as the sides, all right? When it's bowed this way, it's a little better, but still, it's harder to get an even amount of pressure on your print. And maybe I'm jumping the gun on that for a moment, but we'll understand that. The other thing, materials that can be used for relief printmaking is linoleum. This one has a different color behind the gunmetal gray facing so that you can see what you're carving. This is very easy to carve, and a lot of printmakers do prefer this because you don't have to worry about the grain work. You don't have to worry about blemishes in the wood. And it is very flexible. It's easy to cut. You can use the Speedball carving tools with this type of material, and these are a little less expensive. So if you're looking for a more economical way to make a print, this might be of interest to you. For me, being outdoors and taking many walks in the Arboretum and such, wood and nature just has a calling for me. And so when I get a nice piece of wood and there's this grain work in here, I'm not only using my design, but I can use the lines that are involved in the wood. And I think that just adds to the quality of the print. So for me, a little bit of care in cutting around the grain work is well worth the final print. There also is this flexible material. I mean, Dick Blick and Speedball are always coming up with new mediums to carve on. So it's interesting. So if you have interest in that, you might have seen, this is a layer of linoleum that's attached to a block. And this is easier to handle when you're carving than a flat piece. So this is a easier beginner type of project. For my most of my prints, well, so with the animal prints, those are always, well, they're either a pine board or a poplar board. And it's somewhat easy to carve the wood, and it gives a nice final print impression. My larger pieces, and let's see, we can go to that one there, I think. I'm not going out of order too much, but we'll this piece here, each color has its own board, and each board was carved on plywood. So this is all of this was on plywood board, and this plywood was bought at Menards big box store. So it's like $7 a sheet, and I can get two images off of a 2x4 foot.
How big is that?
This is 18 by 24. And so you can get two of these off of a 2 foot by 4 foot piece of plywood. So, well, while we're here, so if we weren't doing if I wasn't using Ellen's drawing, I would have an idea. So this idea of a print came from and rowing experience. So I joined a rowing team when I turned 40, and there's a lot of repetition in rowing, and so a lot of the same visuals occurring over and over again. So that's that common theme in my prints. So I had an idea of the oars coming off the side of the boat and the current around the boat and the speed that's driven by teamwork. And so from this initial doodle, I created a template of what I'm going to trace onto each of the boards. So this was the first color iteration of what I thought would come through. So you can see our registration holes here up at the top, and then it was laid on each of the boards with the carbon paper, and then traced on each board. And then, sorry, back to this one here. So as I'm carving the boards, I am printing each of them, and this is a block-proof print. And these are not the final colors. I'm just using inks that are readily available in my studio. It's just to make sure that the registration of the lines is what I want to happen. And then after the proof is done, then I will go back and print the blocks with the actual colors. And I don't have it queued up in the slideshow, but there will be some of those slides in a while. So I'm going to get some more tracing done with Ellen's work here. Well, with what used to be a lovely drawing, right? Okay, so I think that's going to be enough. And since it's registered by having it pinned down the drawing to the registration block, I can take a look and see, okay, is that enough compared to the drawing to give me an idea of where I'm going? That's going to be good. So now I cut these blocks so that they're basically the same dimension, so that if I wanted to carve both of them with the grain going the same way, I have it that way. Or since it's the same dimension, I can change the block this way. Oh, one thing, looking at the dimensions of the block. So the drawing that I requested, I gave Ellen one dimension of block, and then I brought a different one. So, oh, and there's even more. Okay, this is when you bring too many things, too many goodies with you. We're going to start over. Actually, one second. Let me. I'm going to finish what I was going to do here. So I'm just going to do this quick in case I need a spare. All right. So now I know that that's the image. I'm used to not using this technique, so I just dove right in and started with this. A lot of printmakers will put a small stain on top of their block, and that way, when they're carving, they see what they've carved out, because underneath this very thin layer of stain is the original color of the poplar block. So we're going to use this tonight because I think that will pick up better on the camera. Ellen, I hope I'm not going to give you nightmares before your next drawing class.
Ben, do I understand that you're doing two different blocks, one going with the grain going one direction and one with the grain going the other direction?
That's correct. I'm going to try that tonight because it can add different dimensions, especially if you're carving straight lines along the grain. Having it go different, the crisscross adds some interest to your final print. All right. Ellen, I'm going to have to look at your other drawing. I'm not going to be able to see what, no, I'm kidding. All right. So if I didn't, I have, all right, I lost all those lines, that's right. As long as I know where my center line is, right? Thank goodness the carbon paper gave us a stronger line than my pencil. And what I've done here with these border lines here, what I'll do is I will quickly remove just a little bit on the outside here, so that when I'm rolling the ink on, even though it might get out here, it's not going to get printed. Okay. Is that good? All right, so I have horizontal this way and vertical this way. And then when you're printing, if you're doing multiple blocks, you really want to pay attention to the orientation of your block. And I have an example here. And while I'm drawing this, if you want to go to the Labyrinth. So the Labyrinth is a 2-color block. And if you here, so it's a 2-color block, and the it looks like it's a nice print. However, if you examine this, the entrance on the first block, the background block, the entrance to the Labyrinth is here, going into these rocks. And on the foreground block, the entrance is here. And so the orientation of the background is 180 to the front block. And so even though the circles sort of match up, it's not an exact match. So when you're printing with multiple blocks, you need to be careful, especially when you're using a fine paper like this. It's an expensive mistake, one that you don't want to make too often. So, and I did bring the block. So this is the block. This is a plywood block, and you just keep your tools sharp and patience, and then you will get a lot of detail in there. You see the dimension of that? Okay. I was supposed to be drawing. When I'm talking about my prints, I can't stop. Can't let it go with getting close and showing the details. Are there any other questions as we're going along so far?
If you can just repeat what kind of wood the block is made out of.
So this block is, we're using poplar block tonight. And if you go to the hardware's, the wood store, lumberyard, and you ask for dimensional wood, that will have a very fine finish to it. Whereas if it's non-dimensional, it's not as sanded. So you want the sanded, it'll give a cleaner imprint when you're printing. And that's a good question too, because with printmaking, it's a process, and you aren't just going to jump and do something without having it planned out. It's not, you have time to do some things, but once you get started, you have to know, okay, I'm using this type of wood, that's fine. Then you need to know what kind of paper you're using, what kinds of inks you want, the color of the ink that's going to be printed. And you'll also have to have a place for the prints to dry. You don't want them laying on top of each other. Forget here, because ink, when it's wet, can smudge easily. So you don't want to take any chances of smudging and ruining your hard work. So here we go with, this is our second block. So 2, is that good?
And to clarify, 2-color printing requires 2 different blocks.
Good question. So there's different techniques. Tonight, since it's going to be a quicker tutorial, I'm using 2 blocks, one block for each color. But there is a technique called reduction printmaking, where you use 1 block and you reduce the amount of wood that's exposed for each successive color. And I have one of those here tonight. We will go to this. So with this one, this is a triptych, and the background color, I started with the same block. So you can see the same pattern, even though it's a different color here, the same pattern in that first color. Then I deviated. So I took a second block and I carved this design. So that's what we're doing tonight, is 2 colors. And we're using 2 different blocks. This one here, the second color is white, but then I took that same block and I carved away everywhere where you don't see white for the purple. Okay, so for this one, I printed 20 and I can't print any more of those because the white is not there. Okay, only the purple on that second block. And the same with this one. This is actually the block for this. And you can see the lily pads here. They used to be here, but they're gone now because I've reduced the block so that the only part left was the flower part here to print the purple. So the green spot, the green and the yellow was also printed from this block, but the purple was only printed because I reduced the amount of wood that would hold up the ink. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So the other thing with preparing, you also have to have a roller or a brayer that will spread the ink over your block. You have to have a baron, which is this is a speedball baron, and this is to press the back of the paper, and we'll show that. But I'm going to use a Japanese baron instead of this one when we're printing. And that's about it for printing. So before we can print, we need to carve a block. And the first thing that is always important is safety. We have a bench hook here, and this, they sell metal ones, but you can just glue strips of wood on a plate. And this is so that it catches on the side of the table, so that when you have your block, it's not going anywhere. This enables you to carve back here and not have your hand up front. If you have your hand up front and you're carving, that's a no-no. So we don't want to do that. So with safety, the gouges have one sharp edge. So as long as you keep all of your body parts behind the sharp edge, you're safe. We have 2 different types of gouges. We have and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but there's a U gouge. So it will carve a U. Let me do this. So this is a larger U gouge, and we're going to just go in the wood here, get it in, and carve to the end. So that creates a nice U form, nice even line, and we're carving with the grain, so that's easy for that. This is a V, and this is a really small one. Okay, this is a larger one. Is that better? Can you see that? No, okay. Well, this one will also carve real easy along with the grain of the wood, right? So that gives us a nice line. The V is also effective carving across the grain, whereas the U is more problematic. So by just carving like that, so easy. And again, so this block here, that was an easy cut, right? I mean, I was barely doing anything. This is basswood. So this is something that I would have my students use. So for this block, we're going to carve out this line here. All right, and carve a little bit more. So then I'm going to take a U, because the U removes a lot more wood quickly. Right. So, and I keep going. That was maybe a little too deep. So one of the tricks of the trade is smaller cuts but many cuts, and you'll get a nice. Oh. Thank goodness for my assistants. I hope you're enjoying the comedy at home. As I keep here, take this one away from me. I apologize for that. All right. So now we really get into speed cutting, right? All right. So this is. Any other questions up there? No? I'm not going against my rule there. So did you see what happened there? I went too deep, and the wood accumulated so much into my carving tool that it prevented me from carving easily. And so when that happens, you lose control of your cut. And with most carving materials, you don't want that to happen. When you lose control, you might lose your design. The other thing, I'm working on the outside here, so I'm not gonna remove all of this. We will just cover up what we don't want with a piece of paper. All right. So my hands are fit really well for this type of carving tool, and it fits right in the palm of my hand. So when I'm pushing, I'm using the whole forearm to carve through the wood. I've seen people hold it differently, and like anything in art, there's rules, but then rules are meant to be broken, right? So you find what's comfortable and what works for your technique and go with that. But this is, all right. So now I've created this gouge on the outside.
And someone is asking about how deep should the cuts be?
You know, it doesn't need to be that deep. If you can see here, let's see if that's about, that one is maybe a pencil lead deep, maybe not even that, right? So that's as deep as you really need to go. So relief printmaking is you're creating a relief, and when you roll the ink on top, the ink is going to be suspended on the top. So what you carve away is going to be the whites on your print. This side is a little bit more shallow, and that's just fine too. So it's since this is really flat, you can get away with a shallower cut. If you had some texture on your wood board, you would want it deeper. If you have large areas that are cut away, you want those to be deeper too, so that if there's a little bit of the paper dipping in, You don't want that to catch any of the little splatter that might occur. But for fine lines, like for the leaves here, we can do shallow cuts on that because there's going to be a lot of wood that is left and has a relief there. It's the larger areas are where you want to have a deeper cut. And so the other thing is, so this is going to be our background color because we're going to print the background color first. And so I'm going to leave the leaves. They're there for a reference. And so I'm going to work with the background here on this one. And we're just going to start with a nice technique like this. So, and this. So you see how I went over that a few times, and now that line looks pretty straight. So I'm very happy with that. So now I'm going to go along here and carve here. Let's see. On. All right. Okay, so now if I wanted to, I could, for tonight, I'm not going to do all of these this way, but if I had a little spot here, I can go in with a smaller U. So there's the U's and the V's, and then there's different sizes of the tools that allow you to adjust your carving. And I'm just going to, so I'm using a smaller one here just along the stem, just to square it up just a little bit. Right. Okay, and then we're going to go back to this one. And once you get a groove in your wood, the gouge is going to follow that. So that's the nice thing about doing some, little bit to start off with, and you're cleaning up the look with each successive cut. How am I doing on time? I can't see the clock there. But oh, 10 after 7. Oh, we've got hours to go. All right. So, all right. So I have my stem that's going out here, and we have a little bit of the leaf that has come back in. I'm going to use this here. So it's come back in. So I'm not going to go all the way to the edge there. And you'll see that I stopped before I got to the line. So now I'm going to flip the board. I'm coming in with that same tool, and I'm going to make a cut, and I'm going to meet in the middle there. And I'm going to switch to the small tool for this one. It's right there. And there we go. So now we've done that. So you want to give your lines a little bit of room. You want to, because if you get too close to the line, you might not realize it, but that cut has a little bit of tendency to keep going. And if you get too close, you might break a little bit of the wood that goes into that line. And you don't want to do that because then it's a challenge. Then you are challenged with, okay, what do I do with the design to incorporate that mistake? Can I do something to make it look like that was intended, or match the whole design still? And that, so if you give yourself some room to begin with, it makes it easier. And I had one more thing thought on that, but anyway. Either working with wood or linoleum, that would be the same difference in that type of scenario. That's what I wanted. I find that when I get to the end of a print, my carving tends to go slower because I get a little more concerned about making a mistake. But part of the deal is keeping your tool sharp and giving your lines room. So all right, so for tonight, all my lines might not be completely perfect, and that's okay because it is a handmade creation. Sometimes I think the linoleum cuts, we get too used to everything being digital, and we try and replicate that. And I'd like a little bit more. Nature isn't perfect, and so it just shows that it was hand produced, and you know the carving was involved. All right. Now we get just to go all the way across, or not. So here's the other thing. I could do just horizontal lines all the way across, and that would look okay. But leaves lying on the ground, there might be some debris. So if we add some kind of line work like that, just as ideas. And so some of my animal prints, I'm not sure, I forget what I had on the slide, Barry. So that's not important. But so you just take and they can be offset too. So like that, right? Maybe this one goes a little further.
And how do you sharpen your tools?
Great question. So with a metal blade and wood, they do get dull a little bit. So every once in a while, we will use a slip strop. So if you watch those old Westerns where they have that leather belt and the barber is going back and forth with his razor, well, he's using a leather strop, which this is a piece of leather attached to this board here. And I'm doing the similar thing. So I put a rubbing compound on top of the leather here. And then I'm making a mess, what I'm doing. But so you take your metal tool and you're pressing down at the angle of this blade. Do you see that angle there? Is it close enough?
Not much.
Is that better? Oh. Yeah, so we're mimicking this angle, and I'm pulling it across on the leather. The leather is to cushion the blade, but the pressure of the blade against that rubbing compound is what is sharpening that tool. And so with the U-gouges, it's a curve. So I'm pulling and I'm turning the tool, pulling, turning, pulling, turning, pulling, turning like that. So, and then we flip it over. And so on the inside of this curve, when you pull the metal, it can create a burr. And so when we do this side, this is treating the inside of it. And we're getting rid of that burr. Now this is a sharper tool, and I should do that with this one here. And this you should do every few hours. More often if you feel that your carving is slowing down, or there's more resistance of the metal through the wood. Great question. And it allowed me to get my tool sharp again. So maybe I won't make as many, makes better cuts. And I think it's okay to break that line. Sometimes you might want to keep a very formal border. For me, I like to change it up a little bit. Now, some of these are looking like teardrops, and I will turn the board around in a little bit and carve those away. So since we're closer to that line, I'm going to make this one go this far. All right. Dimension, right? That's good. Maybe like that. All right. Switch this way. Come back in. I don't like that. That one's a little thin. All right. So you can see I've got these little teardrops going on. So I'm going to put the edge of the gouge right on that, and then push easily, and we're going to get rid of some of that. So like this. And you can do it with a smaller gouge if you're not used to aligning it up. But if you get that center of the gouge right there, that should be easy to adjust and sort of. So something there. I got that edge there a little bit. And I want this one to be just a little bit more open. There we go. Okay, so there we have a little more dots going on there, but I didn't want to do all the way around. I thought that might be a little bit too monotonous. So we've got two sections here, so nice. Give me some challenge there, Ellen. All right. Sometimes the little one is very difficult to find which way is up. So for my students, I mark it with a blue tape. So that one's going to be, I have to work on that a little bit. There's a little sliver of wood that is sticking up, and those little slivers will pick up ink, and it will place it on your clean paper where you don't want it. So sometimes these little spots, you go back and forth, and there we go, we got it out. So okay, so we're looking good. We have a nice definition. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, almost. Okay, don't leave your seats for popcorn just now. I'm going to start printing in a moment. Because for this, we're going to print this first block on the paper, and then while it's drying, we're going to carve the second block. So we have our design. You can see the outline. Now, I'm going to do one more thing here because this is a demonstration. And for me, I don't like to define everything. So I want the viewer's eyes to look at the image, and if everything is spelled out, I think that has less enjoyment. If they're looking at it and it takes a while to recognize an object or something like that, they can build a better bond between the artwork and their images that are being seen in their mind. And so what I've done here to outline the stems and the leaf is I've left, I haven't carved exactly on the leaf, right? I've just created this image, there's line work, and you can see that there's shapes here that are being formed. So if I'm going to carve one here, probably it might be, which one is on top here? Can I tell which, oh, and which leaf is on top? If you remember. No, okay, sorry.
It was the fuller one was on top.
The fuller one. Okay,
Yeah.
so this one's on top. So I am going to use my very small V. This is on top, so we want to keep that line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to aid the visual. Actually, I'm going to change to this one here. This one is carving better. So I'm not going to go all the way, so I'm just going to go to there. And I'm going to do it on this side too, but I don't know if I need to go that far down. Yeah, let's do this here. We'll start here and we'll see how that goes. So with wood blocks, I mentioned grain a lot because you do have to pay attention to it. So when I'm carving, if I'm carving this way, the grain is going this way. So, and if I'm carving this way, if there is a strong piece of grain in the wood, it is going to grab, or it has a potential to grab my carving tool. And when it does, it's going to grab it so that it goes into the flow of the grain. So you can see if I'm carving this outside part of the stem, the grain has a potential to grab it and pull it this way, right into this line that I want to keep and preserve. So I have to turn my block this way so that when I'm carving and the grain potentially pulls the carving tool into it, it pulls it away from my main subject area and it pulls it into this line work that I can do something with that if there's a mistake or something, or if the grain pulls the carving tool into it. If it pulled it into the stem, then I really have to worry about what am I going to do. But if it's pulled out into the behind the scenes or the background, then I have less worries. So let's stop here. It's just a little bit deep. Not deeper, just wider. There we go. Yeah. Okay. So now, and that helps define that this leaf is on top, and we might not even have to, well, it's going to be yellow too, so it might not matter that that's done there, but I want to show you what a very deliberate line would do compared to this more subtle look on this side. Okay, so Now, actually, I think if you come up, let's do, because this has a lot of wood chips. We don't want that. Wood chips are also like the little slivers that come up. They have a tendency of liking ink and sticking to your print. So, Sue, maybe if you come on this side, it'll be.
Before we actually start printing, could we also get a nice long still shot of the carving at this
Yeah.
point?
Yes. Ellen, can you hold that up while they're? Oh, right here?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to hold it? Okay. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Use that one anyway.
Okay.
So these are both barons. And depending on your grip and how you use your baron, these are both used to press on the back. I really prefer the Japanese style baron. I can put the heel of my palm on that, like that, see? And then you'll see when I press down, I can then use the weight of my body as a constant pressure on the back. And this one, I'm not as capable of using this one. So I've been using this type of baron for 30 years, and so just used to that. We're gonna bring our this back. The other thing I'd like to mention is I don't get sponsored, but it is a nice thing to have local businesses, and we do have a local printmaking company in town, well, in Villa Park, in my hometown now, Graphic Chemical, and they manufacture their own printing inks for relief, but also for etching, lithography. So if I do get in a bind or something, I can call them up and they're a mile away. So it's very fortunate to have them nearby. I'm going to use this as my gauge here. So we're going to print with green. Oh, thank you. And again, these are for my classes and demonstrations. I always use water-soluble inks. There's many quality brands out there, Speedball, Graphic Chemical, also, and Dick Blick. They make their own, or they have theirs made for them. I'm using Speedball tonight just as an FYI. So with water-soluble inks, easy to clean up, which is a nice benefit. They do dry quickly though, so you sort of have to have your setup planned out and work with that because they do dry. Oh, look at that. There. All right, so I use this one. Yeah. So you have many options. These are rollers or brayers. So this is a Speedball Brayer quality tool. And I have printed the earlier print that I showed, the At the Catch, which was based on my rowing experience. I use this roller, this style of roller. There's benefits of getting larger rollers. you cover a larger area of your board at once. But also, if you notice that the diameter is larger, and so the ink can remain cleaner, not having an image on it for a longer time. So I have a brayer that's about this thick at home, and for the large prints, that's really nice, because what we're doing is we're taking ink off the glass plate, which is a very flat surface, and that ink gets transferred to another flat surface, but it's curved on a roller, and then that gets transferred to the block. And you want to keep your inking consistent. Are we doing okay? Yeah. And so the larger the diameter, the more you can cover on your block without the first impression being applied to the next part of the block. And so that's a great benefit of having a larger one. But since we're doing such an easy print here, we're going to go with this size brayer. And the other thing I want to mention here is now we have a lot of wood surface here. So this would be the main direction of the brayer. When you go this direction, and I'm feeling, I don't know if you can hear that. Can you hear that a little bit? It sounds like a mini speed bump. When you hear that, you want to pay attention and be careful, because when you go over that section of the block, every time it hits that little speed bump, it's going to deposit ink on the edge of the block and not on the surface. You only want your ink on the surface. That if you deposit it on the edge, when you put the paper down and press, that's going to bleed into the section that you wanted to remain white. So this is a good test. I have a little bit of that going on here. So I can adjust the angle and go this way and it's all quiet. So now we're going to come and pick some ink up. All right, we have a little bit of ink, and I always bring it, I try not to droop it and then roll it down. I want to have control over the amount of ink that I'm putting on my brayer. And I change directions quite often, and that allows the ink to have an even application faster, right? Again, remember, it's a transfer of ink from the glass to the roller. And if we go like this, we're picking up ink and we're putting it down in the same spot. If we change the direction, we're adjusting that. So then I come over and put a little bit of ink on, pick up some more. I also try to apply a little bit of ink. Let's see if I can get an image for you. One pass of ink, come back and rejuvenate the brayer so that it's a nice even coat. It gets applied. The other thing, you hear that sound? It's a nice attach and release of the ink from the glass to the brayer. The other thing is, and I'll show you in a moment here. Let's see. Sometimes you can see it. Okay, so you can see the pattern that's from the wood. So I had an even coat of ink on the brayer to begin with. I made one pass over the block, and then I made a pass over the paper. And you can see that the lines where the ink did not get deposited on the block, there's a heavier line of ink on the paper. And that's why you want to come back and refresh your brayer each time. Otherwise, you're potentially giving one section of the board more ink than the other, and then your final print is less consistent. All right, and I know this is not so I don't have it covered with a adequate amount of ink, but that's all right now because I'm going to put my brayer. So we have to sort of prepare the board for our ink. And it's going to take a little bit of time for the board. It's going to absorb some of the moisture from the ink. And so it's going to be a little splotchy to begin with anyhow. So what we're doing is we're letting the moisture from the ink settle into the board. The other thing is, once there's ink on the board, it will attract more ink. So each subsequent print will be a slightly better. And then once we've printed maybe 4 or 5, that's when we can switch to our good paper. Now, next time. That was too quick. I want to show before the ink. Let me bring some down here. Okay, so can you see that?
A little bit.
A little bit. So this is an indicator that there's too much ink. So if your whole square of where you're rolling had that, then you would take your knife and remove some of the ink because that's too much ink. And when you put too much ink on your board, you get a inconsistent impression throughout your editions. We okay on time? Oh.
20, an hour,
All right, let's go.
an hour.
2 more hours?
No, an hour. Do you ever customize your colors?
Yes.
Can you mix these?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Do you have a request? Is that what
No,
you're-
no.
Oh, okay.
I was just thinking of pulling more color and more color. They keep it consistent or don't you care?
Right. Yeah, for this one,
But, yeah.
I'm going to do out of the box. And okay, so I'm going to hold this down. So I'm holding my board down as I'm pulling up so that the board doesn't come with it. Okay, so we're getting already a better impression. And I think I might, since this is the background and the line work in between the leaves looks like it's getting a nice release. I think for the time wise, we'll start printing good papers. I would go a couple more without a couple more test prints before actually printing.
Do you have to repeat all that for each individual print?
Yes. Yes, so one of the benefits of printmaking is each copy is considered an original work of art. And so I can make an edition of, say, in this case, it might turn out to be 7 prints. And then each one is an original work of art, and I can share that with friends or sell them at an art show, art fair and stuff like that. So it is a process, and so yes, you have to repeat it. But the rewards are there, so it's and one of the best rewards for me is when I make a print, I can share it with someone else, but I can keep a copy for myself so that I always have you know, an image of my own. So I'm gonna, sorry if that's in the camera. So if you noticed, I put the paper down with the pins here so that the paper's registered, so that now we're into our edition. And
Ben, I'm sorry to interrupt, but someone was asking, what are those pins that
Oh.
you were using to secure it?
these are just punches. I pick them up at estate sales, but you could use chopsticks or pencils, depending on the size hole that you have in your registration board. But these are punches. This is a 2/32 punch. Hardware store has the punches.
And tell them the reason why you're doing that.
Oh, right. So we're printing the first color. And so I want the blocks to align, the print to align on the paper when I'm changing the blocks. So this maintains the paper in the same place regardless of which block is underneath. So once you've started it, you can remove those, and because the ink acts as a glue. And I'm going slowly because you might have noticed on one of those, the faster you go, you get a little curl in the paper. And we want to try and avoid that. Thank you all. All right. Oh, no.
Ben, what type of paper is it that you're printing on?
Great questions. Thank you. Tonight I'm printing on a Speedball paper. It's an acid-free Printmaker's paper, but something just easy. But acid-free, so it will have longevity. Usually, my prints, I will use a Reeves BFK. This is a cotton-based paper, and if you can see in there, it's a thicker paper. This is a really nice heavyweight paper, and it gives, using oil-based inks, it absorbs some of the oil and it helps dry a little quicker. On some of my prints, I use Kozuki, which is a mulberry-based paper. If you can see, this is really fine paper, and it's made from the bark of a mulberry tree. It is very sturdy, but it's very delicate. So you have to be careful when you're printing with this one in terms of creases and folds, but when you're rubbing the back of it, it is a very durable paper. So very nice papers. The Kozuki, I was introduced by Dean at Graphic Chemical. I was using a type of paper in college that was no longer available, and he informed me that it was tea bag quality paper anyhow. So he introduced me to the Kozuki, and my brother commissioned me to do a print for his office. And here's where your preparation comes into play. He asked me to create a print to fill a wall space. And I said yes, before thinking through all of the logistics of it. It turned out to be a good challenge. I had to create my own drying rack system because the the print paper was so large. And the Kozuki that I had to go with, since the print was so large, the blocks were large, I had to buy a 60-meter roll of paper that's 39 inches wide. And that was a lot of fun to work with. So so what I'm doing here is, usually I would use a paper cutter to work that. But so the roller put ink on this outside border that I didn't want. And when I cover it up with the paper, the ink does not transfer to my print. Go. So again, and we just let that lay down easy. A gentle rub on the back, and then you can remove the pins because the ink is starting to adhere. Very light pressure to begin with. I always go in a circular motion that prevents any lines from the pressure, distinct lines. This is more of an even pressure. And I give a 1 over like that. Again, I'm holding the block so that when I pull this up, it doesn't jar. Going a little slow because it's, I don't know if you can get the sense of the tackiness of the ink and the paper. They're stuck.
And do people ever use a printing press with wood?
Yes, so.
They will use a printing press.
Yeah, press.
Like the old wringer dryers or something, yeah.
Yeah, some with the captain's wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so up until 2019, I did all of my prints by hand in this manner. And this is a technique that anybody can do at home because there is no press. So very minimal overhead in terms of equipment required to print. In 2019, I invested in a press, and the triptych that I showed, that was printed on the press. Okay. So it's called an etching press, but the space between the roller and the bed is large enough that most of my blocks can go through. All the plywood can go through. These blocks might be too thick. It would be on the upper edge of the capability.
And someone's asking about that registration board.
Yeah.
And did you make that, or?
Yes, I did. Again, it's just a plywood scrap, and you can see you want to have a 90-degree angle here between these two boards. So it's you have a plywood base, and then I wood glued 2 strips here, and then I drilled the registration holes. So just a simple thing, and just sand the edges because plywood edges can be a little rough and sharp. That. For my classes here at the DuPage Art League, I provide all of the equipment necessary. So you just come with an image in mind, and I provide the carving tools, the paper, the registration board if we get to that. Usually we start with a single color. At home for registration, I have a, it's not quite 4x8, but it's almost that large of a board because some of the plywood boards that I use are quite large. One of the, I don't have the largest one here tonight. in the slideshow for at the end of the exhibit there or demonstration, there's a motorcycle print and my brother's commission print called Memories of the Sun. Those are 24 inches by 33 inches, the blocks. So to have a registration board, that's quite large.
For those larger pieces, do you make a smaller one first?
Sometimes, yes. The motorcycle print, no. I need to carve the second block, so
You
maybe
have an
one.
addition of 3.
Oh, very good. I've been cut off.
You'd be
My
cut off.
fun with the first block is done.
Gotta get that second part done.
Oh my goodness. See, if I were at home, it'd be like, oh, it's only 10 o'clock. I can do this next thing. And before I know it, it's 2 a.m. So I find this, the whole process is very meditative and you lose time. So thank you for keeping me
Well,
or
we want to
attempting.
see, we want to see that.
You want to see something
That
besides
next
just
color.
green? Yeah, okay. So don't worry about this. All right.
Did you want Ellen to clean that?
No. She's the timekeeper. I don't want to disturb. All right, so, and actually it's just this section here. We're going to carve away some of this. All right.
So now you're doing the second color.
This is for the second color. And that part doesn't need to be as clean of a cut. This might overlap a little bit. We'll see. Okay.
And
All right.
someone is asking, is it important to use both hands to guide your tools?
Again, it's I'm doing both hands here because I'm on a specific line. So I want to, I don't know if you can see this line that I'm carving is right on a hard part of the grain. So it's a little harder to carve through here. And I don't want the tool to sort of jump around. So that's why I'm using the two. And I'm on video, so, you know, no cutting. So no blood. I'm, yeah. It, you know, if it is a little, when it's a little more hard to push through, I do tend to use two. But here, I'll do it without, but you'll see that it is, there's a little bit of resistance. So my outside line against this leaf here is going to be a little, you know, it's going to add character to the print. So I'm not too worried.
You want another piece of glass?
Oh,
Would you like me to get another piece of glass for your yellow?
no, I have this little one here I can
Okay,
use.
that's enough.
Yeah, and thank you so much. Okay, so this one, we can use this. Now, so I was saying for the demonstrations in class, we use the water-based. For my prints, I use oil-based. I just love the texture and the colors that it produces. And if it were, but it does take a long time to dry. Sometimes my reds take up to 5 weeks for a layer to dry. And if you're doing a print that has 4 reds on it, and you have to wait for the first one to dry and successively, it can be a duration. And for the ink here, it is drying on the wood right away. So we're gonna leave it there because I'm not gonna print this again. So it will just accentuate the differences, but I'm using it as a reference because I have carved the lines on this top leaf here, and I want to mimic that on this. And again, I'm using the 2 fingers again. I'm cutting across the grain here, so that's a little more difficult, and it just provides more control. I have seen other carvers where they hold they're holding the tool this way, but I find this to be a little more, well, this piece of wood, either that or I haven't sharpened my tool in a while, which that might be the case.
While you're sharpening that, let me ask, someone has a question about Dremel tools. We've seen some prints carved with a Dremel tool, and wondering what you think about those.
I think it's a great idea for certain applications. This small of a print, I would find it more convenient to use hand tools. But it is a good lead into a print that I started, well, a process that I did in 2019, and I followed up last summer. Last summer, I was involved in a art exhibit called Art in Place, and I used a Dremel to carve a block of wood, and it's actually over here. So if you want to show my print painting. So I carved the block of wood, and this is all during the quarantine time frame. And I actually set up a little, I carved it in the back because it's the Dremel, it was an air compressor Dremel to use on the plywood. And then I painted it, or used a roller and applied oil paint to the block. And then I used canvas, yep, to the left there. And so that's oil paint on canvas. I call it a print painting. I'm not sure if there's a more technical term. And I actually printed this at the end of my driveway so that my neighbors could experience the printing of the art. And then the artwork was on display in my front yard 24/7. And there were 3 variations throughout the summer. So in that instance where it's such a large piece and it's not so detailed in terms of the subject matter, yes, go for a Dremel. Where you're carving, say, the turtle there, and you know, the control that you would need to get some of that detail using a Dremel, I don't think that's, I mean, if you have that control, I'm not going to stop you, right? It's up to you. But I think the hand tools in that instance are a better medium, or a better tool to use application wise. All right, so this piece of wood has some, let's not, because the knife was dull. But that's all right. All right, so my timekeeper, you're also going to make a comment on my squiggly lines, or no?
No, I'm not.
No. Where did we put your drawings? Oh, put it over there.
Original?
No, this is fine. Just when I wanted to reference how many. Well, and again, it's a collaboration, so I'm using your thought, your original idea. So this is the other thing when you're creating art. Since this is not my original, I have received permission from Ellen. At least I thought you did give me. Yeah. She gave me permission to use it. So if you are doing something similar, always make sure you know who has the rights to the image, and that you're not infringing on copyright. Most of my images are based off of my photography, so I'm safe with that aspect. Some of the things I create are doodles that become images. And let's see. I don't know. I'm trying to think that. I don't know, Barry, if you want to go to the slideshow, or is it more interesting for the viewers to see what I'm doing with the carving?
Good question. I don't know if any of our attendees would like to weigh in on that. We could go out and take a look at the slideshow briefly. You mean the one?
The one for
starts-
inside the presentation one. Yeah.
Sure, I'll go out to that one.
Yeah, then they won't see me cut my finger. No.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, yeah, because I've got a really hike here, huh? This wood is really. Can they still hear me talking? Even though it's slideshow? What's on the slideshow at the moment?
Well, I'm gonna switch it now.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they could.
That's fine.
So this is the slide that says Memories of the Sun.
Okay,
From
so
Botanic
Memories of the
Garden.
Memories of the Sun is that's the commission piece for my brother, and you can see the size of it, and then also there's a few slides down. It shows that using the same blocks in different colors, you can have a different edition. And then on two of them, I actually printed what I call Hawaiian Style. So I'm printing on Kozuki paper, and it's the Japanese mulberry paper. I'm applying the ink to the back of the paper. So the sequence of printing the blocks is reversed from your traditional printmaking, but the image, you see the paper first, and then you see the image. And so it's diffused, and which is the same as how they print aloha shirts on the fabric. And it gives a nice soft look to the print. Well, what it does, it also reverses the image. And so that if you hang two upside down, two right side up, and you have two printed backward, on the back of it, I have recreated a sunflower. So you might see the four images.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's an interesting interpretation of the ginkgo. Sorry. This wood is.
Fighting you.
It is fighting me. So. All right. But we're getting there, so that's the important thing.
Mhm.
And what's the next subject on there, Barry?
This is the rowing on the catch, and
Oh,
we're
Yes. And so I showed you the proofs as well, and then you get to see the three final ones. It's a triptych. The center piece is vibrant colors, and that's to represent the power of the rowers, transferring energy from their legs through their body into the oars and propelling the boat. And at the catch is a rowing term, and especially when at the beginning of a race, the coxswain will call out at the ready, so that you're getting ready to start the race, and then you'll call at the catch, so you move your body so that the oars are way back behind you, the tips of them, and then when the coxswain says row, you drop the oars into the water, and then you push with your legs, and the motion propels the boat forward. And sometimes when the oars hit the water, they make this big splash, and that's what I wanted to show in the print. So the central image is depicting the power of the row, the stroke, and then the blue print represents my rowing team and Chicago Rowing Union. And then the green, and we're right here at St. Patrick's Day, represents when Chicago dyes the Chicago River green. And we help another rowing team called Row, and they have a regatta fundraiser on the Chicago River when it's green. So that's a story there. And then there's a museum shot that's at the Elmhurst Art Museum when it was accepted into a show called Sense of Place.
Okay, and the next set of images are Le Grand Zephyr.
Yes, so that is an example of keeping a doodle in a drawer for a long time. So you see the little doodle, and then you see the evolution from the doodle to a sailboat, and then the final print, and it's another large print that is, that one is 24 by 30, I believe, or 32.
And then the next set of images is Seasons of Self.
Yeah, so I am also a docent at the Museum of Contemporary Art, and that Seasons of Self is depicted of an exhibit that was mimicking a TSA scanner, and I took my badge and put it on the scanning bed. It scanned the badge in a dramatic way, and I fell in love with the image and knew right then that I needed to create a print from it, because every artist wants to do a self-image, right? A self-portrait. And when I was printing it, or carving actually, I thought, well, it's hard to represent yourself in one image or one instance. And so another nice thing about printmaking is I can depict different emotions by applying different colors to the same blocks. And so there's 9 instances of self in my Seasons of Self. And so each 4-color combination reminded me of different things, aspects of my life. And so they're titled to reflect that.
And then I believe we have an image of your studio.
Yes, that's the studio, and that's pre-printing press. I had to redesign it a little bit to fit the press in. It's a 330-pound press. It's quite large, but you can see my drying racks there. Those are the same ones that I devised to dry my prints. Very inexpensive. They're cost about $40 to make each one. I use fishing line as the shelves. So the fishing line is strung between nails on each side of the drying rack, and because the paper is not that heavy, so it's very effective. Open air, so that's, there we go. Oh wow, this is really giving me trouble. Thank you. All right, I think that might have been the last one of the slideshow.
Yeah, so I'll stop the slide.
Okay, you can come back and they can see where I'm at, which is here. And it's a loose interpretation of a very nice drawing. But that's okay, right? So you can see I'm using a larger U because I want to remove a lot of wood, and I want to remove it quickly. And I'm okay with an uneven line here. That's fine because there's a little squiggly, and ginkgos have those crinkled edges. The other way is to come at it like this, where you come in on the edge and then push it, and that'll give you a smoother look. Right? Boy, this, well, that's the one thing with wood, you don't know. So it can be from different trees, and this one is, I should have just gone with basswood on all of it, huh? That's all right.
Someone's asking about choice of colors. They comment that the catch is very vibrant. Why did you choose black and white for the Zephyr?
Well, so the Zephyr actually started off as a small block, and it was a 3" by 4", and it was black and white to begin with. And sometimes it's nice just to work with a single color. If I've done a multicolor block, and it's a large print, it takes a long time for it to be completed. The whole process, I know, Ellen, sorry. I know. And I don't have to do all of that. And it's very geometric. The Legrand Zephyr is geometric. There's a lot more geometric involved. And so I think the texture or the look of the print was going to be okay as a black and white. So that's the way I went with that one. The similar with the Cosmic Driver here. I don't know if you want to show that one again or not. You did show it once before, but I think there's a lot of graphic quality to it, so the black and white just works with that. It's simple, right? So that your eyes aren't detracted from the line work as much by different colors. So I think that, you know, it just depends on the image that you're working with. Whereas like the Triptych, definitely I saw when I see things, you know, well, and Legrand Zephyr and both the Cosmic Driver were more based off of doodles. So maybe that had something to do with it too. But how's my timekeeper?
8:15.
Uh-oh, all right.
You want Ellen to ink up your
Yeah,
board?
yeah, Ellen.
Ink up your board?
No, just if you,
Let me get rid of the green.
okay, get rid of the green,
I'll
and
pick up.
if you can stir the yellow for me, thank you. Uh-oh, sorry. Talking too much, right?
Should I wash off the brayer?
No, I have another. I think. Oh, yeah, if you can wash, I'll use the bigger brayer if I'm not. I'll just use the bigger. And some printers, they would leave little specks in here and let that add to their image. I'm just going for just a clean look in the center, especially since under the gun for time, but that's all right. If there is a little bit of an area that is elevated, we can always cover it with paper to block the transfer of ink. Okay, next demonstration is basswood. We would be on to the Q&A. Are there any other questions?
Someone was asking if you could explain again the type of ink. I know that sometimes you use water-based and sometimes oil, and they're
Yeah.
asking if this water-based is acrylic.
No, I don't believe it. I don't think it's acrylic. It is more of a, it's more akin to watercolor because it will run even after it's dry. So I don't believe it's acrylic based. The oil-based ink is a permanent ink. So if you wanted to print something permanent, that's the way I would recommend, is oil-based. Beyond that, it also, I find it to have a nicer application, and the colors are so vibrant. So Ellen was asking if I mix colors, and I do with the oil-based ink, because it's just the vibrancy, but also since it does take a long time for it to cure, if you are intending to print a larger edition, it is still easy to apply. It hasn't dried out after hours of being mixed and sitting out. So that is another very good benefit of using that type of ink. Oh my goodness. I do not usually carve this quick. Sorry, if it looks like I'm very, but you can see that usually my cuts are not, so maybe if I go to a smaller, yeah, let's see this, there, that's better. And you can use a smaller one to get next to your lines and then move up to a larger one too. So there, I'm only using one finger, one hand now, right?
And have you ever cut yourself?
I have, not in recent memory, no. Let's see, I used to carve without using a bench hook, and that's when I got into trouble. And then I found the bench hook, and that saves a lot of skin, a lot of neosporin and bandages. That's not required anymore, so we're good there. And that's why I really do like to stress the safety aspect. If you're always fearful of participating and getting injured, then that's going to take away from your creativity. All right, so we're going to leave. We're just going to leave a little bit here just to show you what that does. I'm not going to get rid of all of it, right? So we'll see what that does. It's going to protect that spot too from picking up some ink. So, all right. Thank you for preparing yellow. All right. So again, we're a little typey, but that's okay. All right. Thank you for the clean roller, Brayer. The terms are really interchangeable. Oh. Ah, look at that. That's not supposed to be there. All right. Hold on a second. Let's see. Which one didn't you show yet? All right.
I'll do another spin.
Yeah, do another spin. I have 10 minutes. Okay. Oh, so the turtle. So I did a black and white turtle, and as part of my animal series, sort of reflecting on my father's pen and inks. So I've been doing animals that I have had close proximity to that I've taken pictures of. I was in Hawaii with my brother's family and learned how to surf on the North Shore and saw the turtles swimming in the reef underneath me, and then saw them come up to rest on the beach. So I made a black and white turtle from that. And when I showed it to my brother, he was showing it to other people in his office, telling them that this is just a study, that he's going to create a multicolored print and it's going to be big. And he told me this, and I'm like, no, the black and white, that's the finished print. The edition is printed. And he's like, well, I want one. And I'm like, oh. So that's where the inspiration for the large turtle came from. You gotta love your younger brother, right? I do love him. All right. So you want to get all the dust off. Okay. So good to look at. We're right there. Okay. That little black pad just keeps the glass from running away when you're rolling the ink. Oh, this is right before the ginkgo leaves all fall off the tree within the 24-hour period, right? All drop. That's all right. Again, we're going to take a paper. Getting a better definition. Okay. And oh, so now this is the time that you cross your fingers. You've done everything. Well, I know I haven't done everything right. This one. See that little piece there? So I'm going to come this way. More. There we go. There. That. And that I did leave on intentional. We're going to print with one and see how that goes, and then the same. So now this is, again, we're using those registration holes to align the paper to the block that's underneath, and this is the second block. I'm just going to let that rest. Now I have one thing that I want to recommend not doing is when you place the paper down, do not put your fingers on the paper to hold it, because that will create little thumbprints on your final print, and you don't want that. You want it to be as flat and consistent across the whole paper as possible. So you're going to hold the block on the side. This is called the reveal. So let's see how we did. So those little things down there, that's not too distracting, but it's not really intended. So we might cover those up on the next one, right? So this is, whenever you have those strips that have ink, don't reuse them. It'll cause a mess. I really should be bringing this over here so that this remains ink-free. I should be practicing the correct method while I'm showing you, especially since this is going to be archived. Forget about those things. One more, yes. How am I doing? Oh, we get okay. All right, so.
Now, could you carve those out if you wanted to?
Yeah, now it would be recommended to carve it out
If you were doing a big addition?
without the ink. Oh, yeah, yeah. So this would be a block proof. And before I printed the edition, those would definitely go away because they're unwanted. But I just left them in tonight to see what they would do. But I don't like them. So at this point, I would clean the block, recarve everything that I need to go away, and then come back and print. The paper strips are just an easy way to get around that, especially for time. I am putting pressure on the block, the paper, but not too much. If I do too much, it might grab because of the friction, and it might shift the paper. And then you'll get a not so defined print. Sort of if your photograph was out of focus. One more. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And you see the green ink came off on that paper. So that's why if you were printing an edition, you really wouldn't want to do it this method. You would want to carve that away. And you would also probably wait until the ink was dry before continuing.
Then how do you clean the block?
Okay, so with water-based, do not submerge it under a sink. Get a wet paper towel that is ringed and sort of scrub the top layer because it is wood. If you put too much water in it, it will absorb the water and it might cause the wood to buckle. You've seen that from plywood being outside in the elements, it buckles, and then you don't have a flat surface anymore. And that means that the flat roller will not apply a nice even coat of ink on your block. Since I'm not printing this again, and if you weren't doing printing yours either, I would recommend just leaving the ink on it, because it does create a nice contrast with the carved wood next to it, right? For oil-based inks, I use mineral spirits. So you want to have some kind of filter for air cleaning that handles that. But there are non-toxic ways to clean blocks. I've seen some people use vegetable oil to clean off oil inks. So there's a lot of opportunity out there.
And then the block could be used again, even years later?
Yeah, depending on your intention. So for like my black and whites, so for my animals, the black and white is an addition of 30. And then I had an idea of, I used to collect stamps in France, and there was all these multicolors of the same image. And so I thought of having instead of a French stamp collection, a Ben print collection, sort of based on the stamps. So I've been printing very limited. So the black and white is 10, and then one color, or I'm sorry, the black and white is an addition of 30, and the one color is an addition of 10. I don't want it to become a commercial outlook of my prints. I want them to be, a limited edition where it's something special. But if you were, so my Seasons of Self is a prime example. There's 9 editions created from the same block, and they're different color combinations. So there you go.
Yeah.
Several have commented they're very lovely, and we love the colors.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well,
So
it's
particular.
yeah, that's the fun part of it. I mean, I didn't experiment with colors on this one. A fun thing that the students do with the water-based, because you can apply different colors while they're wet, and the pressure will actually change the final outcome. So if we did this so that they were both really fresh and wet, and the pressure of it's almost mixing the ink between the paper and the block, and it has some interesting effects. So there's a lot of different creative ways that you can print.
Can we get a nice long still shot of one of the prints, your choice?
Which of these out here?
Of the outside ones, or the print I did today?
I believe this one, yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, this one's fine. There are also
Great, thank you.
so there are additives that you can add to inks so that it would extend the effectiveness so that they're more pliable for a longer time. So there's a lot of things that you can do to get around the fast drying of the water-based inks. But everything that I did here tonight, very simple and easy to do in a home studio. So that's why I like to do the wood blocks. And if you have any further questions, I believe my contact information will be added to the final video, and be happy to answer any questions, or stop by the DuPage Art League and we'll help you out.
Yes, at this point, I'll share that last set of slides.
Sure, yes. Okay. Also, due to COVID, I haven't been able to teach this year, but I do plan to start again either in the summer for summer sessions or the fall session. So if you're interested, would love to have you in the class. And it's a one night a week for 3 hours. Again, I provide all the equipment. So you come with your idea and then I help you create that into a print. So again, thank you for the Wheaton Public Library and the DuPage Art League. I've enjoyed my time and have a great spring.
Yes, thank you so much, Ben. This was great. And thank you again to the DuPage Art League for arranging this. This program has been recorded and we will send the link out to everyone who's registered, as well as the links to your website and where people can see more of these great images and of course, contact you, Ben. And if you are watching the recording of this program and would like those links, please just email me at ce@wheatonlibrary.org. That's CE like community engagement @wheatonlibrary.org. I'm just looking through the Q&A to see if there are any additional questions, mostly just saying how great the finished product looks. So thank you so much for doing that. Lots of thanks for demonstrating and answering all of our questions. If you'd like to make any comments about these images as they're scrolling by, you may certainly do that. There's the motorcycle.
Oh, there's that motorcycle. And this one is a traditional print where the ink is applied to the surface of the paper. This is the Hawaiian style where the ink is applied to the back of the kozuki paper. And so you're seeing the paper first and then the ink, and it's a little bit more faded. Here's this is what the Labyrinth print should look like, not the one I had in the studio here. And that's 9944. The second image is a Hawaiian style. So again, you're seeing and the contrast between the two effects is really fun to see in person. This is a print I created along the I&M Canal. And the first block was carved along the canal, sort of plein air style. And it was accepted into the Illinois State Museum's exhibit there. This is a little doodle that I did. And there's a triptych, so different colors. I enjoy using the same blocks and creating different colors. This is called Mother's Day. It's a print with tulips as a bouquet for Mother's Day. And it's Hawaiian style. That's the first print painting that I did in 2019 in my backyard. And I'm not sure if there's here. So this was last summer, and you can see the print paintings. I started with a blank canvas displayed in the front yard, and the neighbors saw the progression to the finished product. I did a Labyrinth image on canvas as well. And that was fun. All the people walking by would say hello and compliment. So it was a community engagement as well as them enjoying the art. And that's the reveal of At the Catch in my studio. And there we go. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I think that finishes it for tonight. So again, we certainly thank you so much, Ben, and we will be sending out your contact information. If you are watching the recording of this program and would like that, please contact me at ce@wheatonlibrary.org. But again, our thanks to Ben and to the DuPage Art League for arranging this. Everyone have a great evening. Take care, and we hope to see you again soon. Good night.
Good night.